Number 161. I'd like to talk about 161 just for a moment before we get rolling here. This is an administrative kind of interlude, and that is we're going to be changing the system. If you are listening to this recording and you put in a reference number, the reference number has been ascending, started with 1, and we're now up to number 161. What's interesting is that in order for me to make these calls available on the freeconferencecall.com line, I have to replay the entire call to the conference call. I have to upload it and replay it, and it is quite an involved process. So what's going to be happening is going forward, starting either with this class or the next class, when you call in and you ask to play the most recent call, it's probably going to play this 161. Because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be uploading the call directly into the system, and the reference numbers count, or the number is going to be changing. The old numbers are still going to be 100 through 161, but going forward, it's going to be a 5-digit number like 10143, 10144. I think that's where we're up to. So you're going to have to know the reference number that you're looking for if you're going to be trying to access the most recent recording. We're going to try that out for a bit, see if it works, see if people are still accessing it. But it won't be happening right away. I'll do a couple of these public service announcements, and of course the reference numbers are all available on the website, it's almost updated weekly. But at TwerskiWellness.com, under the events page, there's a page there that has all the numbers and the titles, so it's all accessible there. But today is 161, and it is an open line as usual. If you've joined us today and you've got something that is burning on your mind, or maybe it's just kind of popped in just now, and you want to share it or discuss it, if you're on the phone, press *6. If we haven't heard from you in a while, we'd love to hear from you. And so now's a good time for that. Go ahead.
I noticed something today. I don't know if it's like, again, always like thinking how things make me feel better. I don't know what makes me feel better. It's just an observation that I made. How two different people could do the same type of thing, and one of them, it happened in the last 24 hours, can cause triggers of like, oh, I don't say cause. I know I'm using the wrong verbiage, and I'm learning enough that no one can cause something for me. It's me, my own thoughts about it. But I'm just saying how when I notice different people that I interact with, it's just almost the same type of thing could happen. And with one, it'll blow me over the top and get all into a insecure tizzy, or angry tizzy, or sad tizzy, or triggered emotion in some way. And then another person, it's like, oh, she must be going through a hard time, that's why she's acting like that. Or I forgive her, like I right away don't have any feelings towards it. It's just, oh, that's her. I make excuses in some way. Trying to figure out why, but I noticed that. Like one friend will be, oh, what are you doing tonight? Oh, you want to get together? Yeah, let's get together. And then she'll cop out. And if someone else does the same thing and cops out, I get like so hurt and personal, while the other person did the same exact thing. But in my head, I'm like, okay, she must be tired. Like just give her more. And it's so weird, like the same situation. And I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I'm noticing it's the same situation. So it's obviously my thoughts about the situation. Noticing that, but it's also, why do I have certain thoughts about a situation towards one person and the other thoughts towards the other person? If it's the same action and it's all coming from me, why does it change based on the person?
Tammy?
What?
You have had an insight. Now, it is the first step towards discovering a new world is asking questions about your current world. Now, your current world, like me and like most of us on this call, we had a certain outlook, a certain perspective about how life works. Why do I feel the way that I feel? Namely, I feel the way that I feel because of what's going on around me. You with me? That's kind of the basic perspective that almost everybody has. I feel what I feel because of the way that I'm being treated or because of the way that you're behaving. Something out there is making me feel the way that I feel. That's kind of the premise that we all work with. Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, what's happened for you is, and I think that's happened for almost everyone here, is that at some point, the first step towards blowing up that premise is just getting an insight into, wait a minute, that can't be true. That doesn't explain the full picture because, like you've just described, some of us start to notice via insight, we realize, wait a minute, two people doing the same exact thing to me, and yet to one person I react one way, and to another person I react differently. Like what would account for that? If it's just someone else's behavior that drives and kind of influences how I feel inside, well, then why would there be differences here when it's the same exact scenario? One person I find myself being very accepting, maybe
Right.
forgiving, right? Forgiving, and I think of I'm down the kafschos. I don't take it personal. Doesn't have a whole lot of meaning to me personally, and yet someone else, it's like, whoa! I'm hurt by it. I'm insulted. I fall apart, and I kind of view what they've done as sort of like a personal attack on my integrity. What would account for these completely opposite end of the spectrum reactions to basically the same behavior? And asking that question means that someone has had an insight into understanding that they don't really understand how it works. That's the first step. Like, wait a minute, there's something here that I'm not fully comprehending. I'm not fully, my construct about what helps me understand me and how I feel, the premise that I have, that my feeling is coming somehow from the world around me, is not adding up. I need a better explanation. And that's where you're at with that insight. That's a powerful step. It's probably one of the most powerful steps in deconstructing an old premise, is by realizing that it is not accurate. It's not fully explanatory. It doesn't make sense. So good for you. Where you gonna go next is anyone's guess, but
Well, I know
That's
where I
okay.
am, and it's driving me crazy now. I'm analyzing why I know why the difference is. Like I'm seeing, oh, this one explains to me afterwards how she was down and she wasn't in the mood, and so I forgive it because it wasn't. And the other one just randomly, haphazardly cancels plans. So I'm noticing the trend, and that's what's triggers me with one or the other. I don't like that answer for myself because I just know that's more me, but that's my feelings coming out of thoughts of this person versus that person. There is some kind of justification behind it. It's not like I'm crazy and this person ticks me off and this person doesn't. There's a reason, because every time the other one's telling me, oh, she just ended up, she tells me why, is the other one just blanketly, coldly cancels plans. So that does it help me in any way though now, knowing, like, is that a knowledge to know, or it doesn't matter? Like,
no, it sounds to me, what I'm hearing from you is that you've asked the question, but in not knowing the answer as to why you reacted one way to one person and differently to another, is you step back into the idea, well, they're different. There's something about them that's different. One person is apologetic. One person is kind of taking me into account, and the other person clearly is not. And that's why I feel differently. It has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the fact that they are different situations. And everyone's welcome to kind of have that perspective, but that's the same premise you started with. The same premise you started with of that there's something in the world that's making me feel what I feel. Then you ask the question of, wait a second, that's not adding up. And you're in essence telling me that you're back to square one, that no, it is them that's making me respond the way that I'm responding inside. It's because they are different. One is apologetic. One is kind of more sensitive to my needs, and the other one is just, flipping me off.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now that's fine. You can hold that premise, but what if you answered the question differently? The original question was, why are these two people who have in essence done the same thing? They've canceled plans on me. And maybe this is not the first time they've canceled plans on me repeatedly. What if the reason that I react to that similar action differently to one person than I do to the other is not because of what they've done afterwards, but it's because of some way that I think about what they've done. There's something about how I am thinking about their canceled plans that is 100% of the time responsible for how I'm going to feel about them canceling plans. And so that in this direction, we're not going to be answering the question of, well, they're different. One apologized, one didn't. We're going to be looking for an answer that has something to do with me. There's something about me, not that I have to change it, not that I have to think differently, not that I have to be some perfect person, but in just trying to understand, well, how did I arrive at this feeling? What if we looked for an answer within, looking within myself, looking at something that's going on for me? Because one of the most accepted things in the world, people will say, there's no way that you can feel something without thinking it. It's just, everyone knows you can't be thinking love and feeling hate. Like, we know there's something going on in me. I have to take that into account when trying to understand what's going on inside emotionally. Where we've gone with it, and this is, again, something that each person has to see for themselves, is that not only are we seeing that we feel our thinking, and that is the source for how I feel the way that I feel, but we're also seeing that what I think, and hence feel, is completely independent of what's transpiring in our lives. It's a separate system. It's not related. It's not driven by the world around us. It's free. I don't mean it doesn't cost anything, because it's going to cost you your feeling. Whatever you think, you're going to feel. So it's not free in that there's no currency being expended. But it's free of the influences, these supposed influences of the world around us. I feel what I think, and what I think is independent of the world around me. Now, I'm suggesting it to you and to everyone here. Not that you should take my word for it. I'm just describing what I have seen to be true. And that the only way that's really going to help you is when you or each of us kind of realizes that for ourselves, just like you realize that question of, wait a minute, my feelings changing and the circumstances are basically the same. Like, that occurred to you, that welled up inside of you, came to the fore of your prefrontal cortex. It was like, it was there. You didn't have to imagine it or figure it out. It was like, wait a minute. So you get that insight. And then what I'm saying might be real for you as well. Anyone else want to jump in here? But thank you, Tammy, for sharing that, what occurred to you there. And that's the right direction, certainly, asking those questions. While it is true, to me at least, that beyond this simple fact that we feel through thought and nothing else, and that fact is immutable a right word to use here? Like that's something that's just always true. And while it is true that our thinking, which we feel automatically, is free to be anything. Literally, it can be anything, despite what's going on out there. But that fact is really just a platform on which to help us make sense of our world. It's kind of just true about how our world works. We feel our thinking, and that's a powerful thing to know for someone who most of their life believed that there was something else that they were feeling. There was something in the world that they were feeling, something in their environment, something in their past. Like it's a real big step to go from believing that you're being made to feel what you feel by virtue of what's going on around you, and then stepping into a realization of, hey, that's not true. I'm just feeling me. That's a cool place to step into. But after a while, that can get a bit dry. It's like, okay, fine, so what? I'm going to jump to the end here, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to connect it. But with that realization, with that insight of recognizing that everything that you experience is coming from within your capacity to feel thought, eventually will lead us to the wisdom that is already available for you. Like there's going to be another place to look towards for ways to get helped out in the moment. I'll give you an example. It's not a specific example. I'll try to get as specific as I can, but there's two ways that we can kind of think about what to do next. Yeah. One way is to rely on precedent, and that sounds very academic. The Supreme Court operates on precedent because they once had a Volkswagen 200 years ago, and they decided and ruled in a particular case that this should be the law. Well, that was the precedent because some backward guy in 1882 decided that this should be the law in such and such a case. So that became the precedent that kind of set forth how we're going to think about these situations forevermore. And so that in 2024, we're beholden by that precedent. We're not allowed to think about it differently. Now, the Supreme Court is a great institution. It's carried us very far. But there's another way to think about right now. There's another way to think about each case as it comes before you. And it's the way Jewish law is decided. Sure, Jewish law takes into account precedent. But even when you go to a Rav to ask a basic shaila, like is it kosher or is it treif? Is it mutter or is it asur? The Sfarim are very clear that such a Rav, before paskening, even if he's paskened on that question many, many times before, he has to relearn the subject. He's supposed to look it up again. Ideally, in most cases, that's what he's supposed to do. And my understanding of the basis for that instruction is that the way the Rav is going to paskin now, in this shaila, in your case, on this day, is a divine inspiration that is coming to him now. It's not rooted in the precedent, it's rooted in the principle. It's rooted in the principle that they are going to be given wisdom now, which will be perfectly fitting for now. Yes, the guidance for that, discerning whether someone's having wisdom or whether someone's getting trash, is to refer to the precedent. There are certain rules to help guide them to discern whether what's coming through is wisdom or not. But it is the wisdom that's coming through now that allows a Rav to paskin, or what allows a tzaddik to give advice. But that capacity to have wisdom now that's appropriate for now is not reserved just for a tzaddik or for a Rav. You've got it too. This doesn't mean to ignore the past. What it means is that you use the past as an information that you can refer to. But your real gold, your real reliance, your real truth for now is going to be the wisdom that is coming to you now. Now, I know this sounds a bit dangerous, because what if someone has wisdom that's telling them to eat what everyone knows to be too many pieces of chocolate cake? I mean, that can happen. And so we have controls for that. You have a Chazal told us, Aseh lecha rav, make for yourself a master. Uknei lecha chaver, purchase for yourself friends who care about you to kind of help you stay on the straight and narrow. But the existence of this chachma, this wisdom that is available to guide you, and it is the most appropriate and fitting ideas for now, will be coming to you right now. Those are principles, not precedent. Those who rely on precedent make statements like, well, last time I had it was terrible. It was just going to that person's house was just a bad experience. Relying on precedent doesn't, other examples of precedent might be, well, I just such and such a thing makes me anxious, or I'll never amount to much. Even when investing, like they've got this, if you listen to these investing commercials, they have these big, glorious investing commercials. At the end, you hear this little disclaimer: past results are not past performance are not indicative of future results. Like they kind of stick that in there just quickly. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Doesn't make a difference how much precedent you compile about any given topic, particularly yourself. That in no way limits or helps you predict exactly what results you will find in the next moment. In fact, just one, I'm trying to quote here, I'll see if I do it right. Just one moment of insight can be worth more than all your previous knowledge put together. Like that can happen. And that's not just for great people. That's for anyone. It's just the system. It's just there. But I never do that. I thought I had to just compile information. Master and master and master. Rely on yesterday's work. But I'm much more of a what have you done for me lately type of guy these days. Not in a bad way, so to speak, but I want to be more available for. I want to find more often. Now that I know that it exists, I want to find, well, what's coming to me now? What looks true to me now? What's guiding me now? I don't want to use another app for that. There are certain places that applications don't work. And the way I've heard it said is, there's a particular prohibition when creating or building the Mizbeach and the Beis Hamikdash to not use iron. It has to be made of pure stone. I heard that Rashi there mentions that why can't you use barzel? Why can't you use iron? So Rashi says, well, iron is kind of like an app. It was used to shorten the life of man. Generally, that's used to mean that it's used to make swords. And swords are a way to make it easier to kill somebody. You can do it quicker than bare hands. Cain had a hard time. I mean, he had to really work hard to kill Hevel. If you had a sword, she's like just one poke and it's over. Don't use iron on Mizbeach, not because it's an evil thing, iron, but because iron is something that's used to kind of not have to do the real work. I'll just get around it by using an app. I'll write some code in Excel and it'll be all automatic. I'll do the work yesterday and it'll continue to work for me today. That doesn't work when it comes to spirituality or relationships. Certainly not your relationship with the divine. There's no way to bypass or kind of have a shortcut to wisdom. One of the shortcuts that we've all become very reliant upon is the past, precedent. Let me just rely on what I heard yesterday, what worked yesterday, what worked for somebody else. There's no app for wisdom. There's no shortcut to wisdom. I'm not saying that I always know how to access it and just let me just look there and boom, it's there. Sometimes things just you show up to or you're available to what's coming in the moment. But that's not the point. I'm not saying I'm a master of it. The point I'm just highlighting today is that it's there. Like it's there. And I don't know, I barely know the first thing about it. So when we talk about this bedrock principle of the fact that you feel your thinking and nothing else, that is true. And that will never change. And that will, every time you realize it, get you off your high horse of believing that you can justify your feeling given what's going on in the world around you. It gets you off this idea that you can blame others for how you feel. It gets you away from relieving yourself from having anything to do with this feeling. It wasn't me. Well, it is. Always. And that's nice because that's true. And I don't want to live in a fantasy world. I don't want to live in a made-up world. I don't want to live in a world using equations that aren't true. I don't want to use fuzzy math. I do believe that was a term made popular by the second president, George Bush. I don't want to use fuzzy math. I want to know the real numbers. I want to know the real deal. What's happening? What's happening is I'm feeling my thinking. Great. That's getting clearer and clearer to most of us here. But there's somewhere else to turn now. It's not just, oh, well, I'm feeling my thinking. Well, I'm stuck with this misery. Well, no. The concept or the insight into realizing that you're feeling your thinking will remove from your mind all these precedents that we preoccupy ourselves with. and free us up to look to a different source that wants nothing more than to feed us. So there's that too. Sippy, you had your hand raised before.
I was just thinking to share something. One of the fields that I work in, I find I feel very stressed many times in that specific field, a lot of parts of it. And I kept thinking to myself, like, as I'm feeling stressed, like, it's like, what is it about? Like, what is going on exactly? Like, I'm just not understanding. Like, I know what I'm doing. I know what I have to do. Why so many parts just, I kept thinking, I kept blaming the actual job, and what it entails. I'm like, this I find stressful. This I find stressful. And it was more like blaming it instead of taking it to myself and saying, like, you're not feeling like you're getting your workout in when you're busy with this job. You're not feeling like you're getting enough sleep. You're not feeling like you're pampering yourself. You're neglecting certain things you love to do because you're so busy with it. And then I started thinking to myself, like, okay, it's coming from within. It has to be coming from within because there are so many people that are in this field and the stress is there regardless, but who really feels it? Like, it has to be coming from me, from within. I really feel this stress. Like, it has to be from within. People are taking 10 times more business while they're doing this actual thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel overwhelmed sometimes by just taking 2 clients in this field, and people are just doing it as a full-time job, and I'm doing it as one of my part-time jobs. And I just came to realize that it's for sure coming from within, and I need to make a decision. It's not the actual job is one thing, but I need to see for myself from within what is occurring to me. Like, maybe it's still like I'm always on the verge of saying, okay, it's not for me, and now I'm on the verge of saying, like, maybe there's a way I could have different feelings towards it. Maybe I have to remind myself, okay, so things are not, you'll take care of whatever you need to take care of after the event or after this client, you're done with this client or whatever it is. And it's just really, it's a different direction. And we always say it, but it's really, really true. Because the other day I was finally getting so frustrated. I said, let me just look within. It can't be that thing, because we have so many people doing it. It's not like a field that people are stopping to go into because the field causes stress. The field can't do anything. It's just there. There's just lists and lists that have to get completed, and there are deadlines and deadlines, but they are just deadlines. All the meaning that I'm putting into this, all the stress I'm feeling is coming from within. And it's something I wouldn't have thought of, if I didn't know this understanding. So look, I still have these that I'm very stressed about, that I feel it's coming from this. And there are these that I'm realizing it's not, and all that back and forth, inside out, but it's for sure a direction that is true. And it's hard. It's a hard truth, because if it was coming from that, so like blame, but it's really not, it can't do anything. It can't jump into my life and it doesn't have that. There's no attachment. So, it's like just something to consider for myself. And I'm sure others on the call or listening, at any point could think of things in their lives where, it's just those things just don't have power. We're the ones who imagine that there's power in all those things around us, people, things, circumstances, challenges, even anything that comes our way, anything we deal with on a daily. So I just, like, it occurred to me, like, it's like we say, like, even if we're not feeling quote unquote better and we wish we could feel better, it's like just a way of life of just, again, understanding how we come to experience. And to me, that's like refreshing. I say it over and over, but I'm serious. Like, it's like such a simple knowledge that is just so true and so real. And like, if people try to argue with it, I will not budge from this understanding, because, it's just, people always try to find like, but maybe here or not, but how could you say that? And this is like constantly going on. But I believe it to be 100% true.
Well, actually, raises a question for me, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to think about it. Is it possible, given what you all have learned, I'm not just asking you, Tippy, I'm asking everyone, is it possible, given what you see today, to be awake to the fact of thought and the presence of wisdom and the context of life? Is it possible to be there, not just know about it, but be there and feel stress simultaneously? Is it possible to be there? And let me just give you a little bit of a context of what I mean by be there. I think I mentioned it before that Kabbalistically speaking, there are 4 worlds. There's the Olam HaAsiya, the world of doing, the world of our world. There's the Olam HaYetzira, the world of form, the Olam HaBriya, the world of creation, and then there's Olam HaAtzilus, which is the world of, well, it has no real form or creation. It's called Olam HaAtzilus because it's just the first expression of an idea, really. And of those 4 worlds, Moshe Rabbeinu, who was Chacham Mikol Adam, was the wisest of all men, he never reached any further than the lowest of the, let's say, the 10 levels of Atzilus. Never went any higher than that. And everyone asks, how could you say that? I mean, the Zohar came along and wrote all about all these worlds, including the Olam HaAtzilus, and even above it, something called Keser, these very lofty levels of, and he wrote extensively about them. And so everyone asks, how can the Zohar write about them if no one's greater than Moshe Rabbeinu? And here the Zohar came along and was writing about them. I thought, we don't know about these worlds. So the answer that they give is that the Zohar was writing about them, but he wasn't there. Whereas Moshe Rabbeinu was actually there. Yeah, he stood, so to speak, at the highest worlds as far as a person could go. Yeah. So when I talk about knowing about the fact that you feel your thinking and that you are a part of a divine design and that you have wisdom that has always been taking care of you and always will take care of you, and just that you forget it from time to time. Is it possible to be there in that moment of knowledge where that knowledge is filling up every cell of your body, and simultaneously experience stress, anxiety, depression, anger, hurt, angst, loneliness, despair? Is it possible? That's the question.
Yes.
We have 1 vote
I'd
for
say yes.
Any other votes? There are many.
If I understand you correctly.
Go ahead, Mrs. Kruger.
Yeah, I see. I would say yes. Also, I mean, for me, it's kind of like a. I'm going through something now where I just think it's that experience is almost like a free falling feeling. Like I just feel like I'm so aware of that. I've had a big life change recently. My daughter got married, and the perspective of the change in my life made me understand so clearly how my experience with her was completely thought and nothing to do with her. and how busy I was in thought about her whole childhood and teenage and young adult years. And suddenly she's out. And there's this, I can't explain it. There's this free fall feeling that it's coming along with like knowing that I was completely experiencing my thinking around her, and I'm experiencing my thinking now with her absence and the loss and the joy that's coming from her marriage, but the loss of my almost identity on some level, because I was so I was so involved in her and worried about her and thinking about her. And here, I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but I'm getting a deeper understanding of what was going on for me all those years and what's going on for me now. And then, but when you know that, and there's nothing to kind of grab onto to define why you're feeling something, it's just totally within. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to say this right, but there's this feeling of like, now what? Like, now what? There's, I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but there's a very, it's kind of exciting. Like, I don't know what's kind of emerge now, because I'm feeling a lot of different emotions that aren't so comfortable, but I'm also not, as I've been in the past, able to kind of grab on and say, this is what it is, and this is the reason. It's just like, okay, now where is Hashem going to take me next? That's how I would describe that feeling of feeling the discomfort, but knowing deeply that it's not.
I'm first of all, I'm Mazel Tov on the wedding. I mean, I had no idea. Mazel Tov to you.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
I've kind of been, out of the picture for a while. Thank you, Baruch Hashem.
But when I asked the question, I'm going to admit to the crowd here that I really wanted the answer to be no. But now, after listening to you, Atzipi, of course, voted yes. And now, in listening to you, Chaya, it occurred to me, like, yeah, you're absolutely right. I asked the question incorrectly. The question really isn't so much about whether you can be there and whether you can have these feelings or not. Of course you can. The question is whether it's distressing to you. Can you, and again, this is just now, I might change my answer next week, but can you be awake and aware of the divine nature of life and how your experience works, and be distressed about being anxious, sad, lost, lonely, or feeling despair? And my sense is that, yeah, you could have those feelings, but it is the as Keith Blevins puts it, the unnecessary suffering that will be absent. I have a bit more to say about that, but I want to hear from Shandy first.
So there's knowing and there's knowing. When I know intellectually how the system operates, I can experience the full range of emotions and fall for them and forget, even though I know. When I know experientially, when I have a deeper das about how something works, even though I'm in an uncomfortable emotion, the thinking about the experience has a very different flavor. I'm trying to put words to something that I'm seeing in my mind, but I'm having a hard time articulating. So what I'm trying to say is that there's knowing and there's knowing. When I know in a really deep way that what I'm experiencing is coming to life via thought, it's very, very different versus knowing that intellectually and telling myself, oh, Shandy, you're experiencing thought right now. There's a very big difference in the experience of knowing where it's really coming from and where it's not coming from, versus telling myself something about it.
Yeah, and that's what I heard in what Chaya was saying. Actually, what I heard in Chaya's words along those lines, Shandy, was something that I've seen in the Sefer Ma'arei Naim of Reb Nachum of Chernobyl. I don't think he had a last name. I'm not sure. Maybe he did. But he's an ancestor of the Twerskis. And I don't think I'd be able to understand it without having listened to my Rav, Rabbi Michael Tversky, over the last 30 years of my life in different ways. The Marnaim writes that while it is ideal to serve God from something called Gadlus Hadas, where everything is clear, you're inspired, you're connected, you can see the presence of God in every atom. You're filled up with awe and reverence and love and yearning. That's the best place. Like that, you're there. Yeah. He writes, but the way the system works is a ratzo v'shov, hachayos ratzo v'shov is a verse I believe in Yechezkel. Don't quote me on that. And the spirits were running back and forth, kamari habazak, like electricity, like a bolt of lightning, out and in, out and in. And the way the Ma'arei Naim describes the purpose of that is that there's another principle that we have, not a three principles type of principle, but there's a basic operational principle in the universe. And that is the way we are constructed is that a tanug timidi eino tanig, a constant pleasure is no pleasure at all. Something that you have constantly, it's hard to appreciate it. It kind of gets stale after a while. It's only absence makes the heart grow fonder, you might say, or when you don't have something all the time and then you have it, you really appreciate it that much more. And so there's this ebb and flow, so to speak, of these states of consciousness where you're fully filled up with the knowledge of God, and then it is taken away. Sometimes so utterly that you are left at the bottom of a pit, a sheer pit, without any ladder. And that the only thing left to you to get out, as Rabbi Tversky puts it, is sheer yearning. That's it. There's no tool, there's no workaround. No one's coming to help. And that's what I heard in Chaya saying, well, I'm just waiting to see what God has in store for me next. And what's occurring to me now, and this is just me, I'm not, it always is just me, but with the Ma'arei Naim's approach to these states of feeling lost, and understanding that that is part of a loving system, a system that was created for us. Within that context, another way to say it is understanding your moments of distress and lostness within the context of the three principles is no problem at all. There's no suffering there. It's understood. So yes, you can find yourself feeling very lost. You can find yourself being filled with thinking of how terrible life is, or how terrible your situation is, or how bad things look, or how there seems to be no way out. But even that is not the issue. It's the way we think about those scenarios that will determine the feeling. And an absence of the knowledge of the principles, or an absence of the knowledge of understanding or reincorporating even these upset and uncomfortable states, as Shandy put them, without the context of understanding that we are feeling our thinking, that we are still in God's world, so to speak. That's independent of anything that's going on out there. will have no chance to look for wisdom in those scenarios. I have no idea what's going to be next for you, Chaya. What's going to occur to you, what's going to develop within your own mind, your own heart, how you're going to rediscover something that you always had and maybe find a new way forward for yourself. But this old way of thinking about your life, yourself and your daughter and who you are and what life is about, it's not for you anymore. That's yesterday. And to a person who needs to have yesterday in order to move forward, there's suffering there. It's sort of built-in suffering to the idea that I want to recapture the past. I want to recapture this old way that things were, because that's the only way that I can move forward. But there's way better stuff that'll be next. And the knowledge of that is the same thing as the knowledge of wisdom that's available to you. It's the same knowledge of understanding that there is a removal of the old level of being before you can go forward. The old metaphor of you can't fill up a cup if there's something already in there. So take out the old. Who knows what's coming next? And there's no way to kind of predict it, but there's a choice here that we could fill up the cup with ideas. We could fill up our mind with ideas that I missed the past. I can't move forward in this new way. I don't have any wisdom that's going to help me. There's no one that's coming to help me. And so I'm lost. And then we get preoccupied with that and we feel it. But what I heard just briefly, Chaya, and what you were saying is that, well, there's something even bigger than that. There's a different way to think about this. And I don't know what's coming next. I'll have to see. And so if we go back to my question, I guess now, Tzippi, you and I agree. Yes, it's possible. Even with the knowledge of the principles being there, to even be filled up with the most putrid feelings and have no issue with it at all.
Okay, you understood me. I'm happy. I'm like trying to listen to see if I was totally off or I understood you. Very cool. I mean, not very cool. I wish it would be differently, but this is what I experienced. So I know it to be true. This is reality. And when we know when we're in touch with reality, I think that in itself is just, even if it's hard, I don't know, I just find it to be that much easier and real. And I feel differently. I just love the truth. So,
yeah. Well, I'll be honest with everyone here. I oscillate in answering this question. I have for years, and I see I'm still doing it today. Like, I'm not sure. I'm recognizing that I go back and forth. So I'm not sharing any absolute truth here on this concept, on this question. But at least for me, I think we're pulling things out here. I'm being reminded of something that I said in the past, not that I'm using it as a precedent, but that it rung. I remember it rang true in the past, and it's ringing true today. That the issue that we're dealing with is not an emotional one. We don't need to treat depression, treat schizophrenia, treat anxiety, treat PTSD, treat addictions. I mean, you can do those things, but that's not going to be very helpful until we treat the real issue, which is knowledge, understanding, getting a chance to relate to our emotions through a lens of how they actually are created versus being preoccupied with how they are not being created. And in a self-help world that is governed by the idea that negative feelings means something is wrong, They will approach those feelings as problematic. We are not going to do that here. We're going to see feelings for what they are. They're part of life. We have good feelings, we have bad feelings. What trips us up is the idea is that there is a bad feeling, that there's something unhealthy about a feeling. That's not what's unhealthy. What's unhealthy, or what trips us up, or what holds us down, is a mind that's preoccupied with the idea that my feeling is coming from something in the world around me, or something that's wrong with me genetically, or something that's wrong with my brain or my heart or my soul, or something that's embedded in my being. So I liked it then and I like it today. Shandy.
So what came to me is the saying, pain is unavoidable, suffering is optional. And then I sort of tweaked it in my mind, life is unavoidable, suffering is optional. And even more tweaked is feelings are unavoidable and suffering is optional. And suffering versus pain, right, doesn't take place within wisdom. Because the feelings will show up no matter where you're at. The suffering of those feelings is different when we have an idea of where they're really coming from or what's producing them.
Nicely said.
I was also going to say, like, even if something doesn't change in our lives over a long period of time that we wish to see change in, from when that pain started throughout, it could be years and years, it's still there. The pain is still there. The tears still come. All that's, the sadness still happens. But again, like you were saying, Shandy, like it's the suffering that can change, and that has changed for so many. Once with this knowledge, we understand it, we see it from a different lens, even though it's all not changing. You know what I'm saying? There's something else that's changing in our minds and our understanding, and that is what I think we're referring to here.
Yes, thank you, Tzippi. Anyone else? I've got a couple minutes before I got to go up the road to the Lag Ba'omer Adlaka.
Can I
Yes.
just add something?
Yes, Mrs. T.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is a crazy hour. I hope in the summer I'll be more available. And thank you for putting me on and off. But what I'm gaining from all this, because there are times I'm so hard on myself, and I appreciate all your sharing, that it's not a matter of being hard. Like, I fluctuate, I get insights, and then I know why I feel and act the way I do, and the insight isn't enough. And then I have to rebuild and reflect again and go back to the inside. For example, attaching myself to other people's feelings about me. There are days that I don't, and I'm great, and I think and then I don't. So this whole conversation really resonated to me. So thank you, all of you, for sharing. I'm here, but I'm not here. I apologize, but thank you.
Well,
So
I'm glad you are here, because you just made a fantastic point that the insight that we're talking about having is not one that you have just once. I mean, you can have it once and then, you never look at things the same way again. But this particular insight that we're talking about is one that comes and goes. We remember it and we see it, and then we don't. And then we're just remembering that we once had an insight. And what happens is that we get to have that same insight day after day, hour after hour, moment after moment, again and again and again. And each time we have that same insight, it sets us back into reality, where a few moments ago we were being riled up by or tied up into the idea that what others think of us matters, and then we're free of it. That And that happens again and again and again. And instead of trying to learn the principles in order to get the insight so that you're done with the process, that idea starts to look a little bit silly. That's not really what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to make something happen so now we're good and we're cured and we're going home. I mean, you can do this from home, but you're going to be looking towards wisdom to help you out each day anew, each moment anew. And that's going to be a bicycle that you can maybe get better and better at riding. That's just a bad metaphor, but you get what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I did not have high hopes for today. That went surprisingly well. Thank you all for bringing the energy. And thank you again to Mrs. Spitz for hosting in Brooklyn. And of course, your comments, from your email comments, your text comments. We did start posting insights on the WhatsApp group. We got a very nice response to the first one that we posted. It's called Insights in Your Words. You write up your insight. I slightly edit it with you, and we post it, and people do gain from reading it. So it doesn't have to. You don't have to attach your name to it. We can if you want. But if you do have something that you want to share with the world, at least our little WhatsApp world, feel free to send it my way. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you. If Tammy lives in Brooklyn, she's
Thank you.
invited to our live class. I don't know where she's from.
Queens.
But whoever is in Brooklyn is cordially invited.
Okay, so let me say it out loud. First of all, Tammy just said she lives in Queens. She can still come to Brooklyn if she wants, but I know by car that's a real pain. But if you're in Brooklyn, very often, if you look at the text, you'll see that the women get together and watch, join the class remotely at, usually it's at someone's house, either Mrs. Spitz in Borough Park or Mrs. Engelman in Borough Park. Sometimes it's in Flatbush, but it's a real nice group of ladies. And at least last time I was there, the refreshments were fantastic, especially the iced coffee. So I encourage you all to go. It's a real nice setting.
Okay, we have to start something in the Midwest, please. Sorry.